Hello, everybody, and welcome to the December 17th, 2018 edition of the Ephrom Josine Show. I am your host, Ephrom Josine. So, the big news of the weekend was a judge named Reed O'Connor, who was appointed by President George W. Bush in 2007, just decided that all of Obamacare was unconstitutional. Apparently, including the parts that we determined were constitutional, and even John Roberts was on the side of. Basically, there was a lawsuit held against the Affordable Care Act that, might I add, was specifically picked to have one of the farthest right judges determine the case. And the one they chose was Reed O'Connor, who had previously determined, I'm not making this up, that the Indian Child Welfare Act was unconstitutional. An act passed in 1978 by Jimmy Carter. Can we just take a minute to ask why federal judges have the power to declare whatever law they want unconstitutional? Like, at the very least, there needs to be a statute of limitation similar to what there is for crime. Where if you don't declare a lawsuit against something in, we'll say, the first 5 years, that's enough time, or at least start it within 5 years, then you can't declare anything null or void. You shouldn't be able to. At that point, you sat there for 5 years and said, no, this is fine, I don't care. All of a sudden, you started caring. Wow. I mean, federal courts just have too much power, and Tom Hartman has talked about that in the past, too. But the original goal was just to enforce the laws. Now look at what they're doing. They're writing the laws. Who says they can do that? Anyway, Obamacare itself is still remaining intact, as this will more than likely go up to a Texas court or possibly even the Supreme Court, where we get to see exactly how Brett Kavanaugh is going to rule. May I remind you, Brett Kavanaugh also wrote that the individual mandate was completely unconstitutional. And may I remind you that ever since then we've also had Neil Gorsuch on the court, who is basically the man who just says whatever insurance companies want to do. He wrote a full book about how bad human-assisted suicide is, which, I'm going to be honest, is not because he's virtuous. It's not because I'm a virtuous individual. No, it's because then how will health insurance companies make money? I'm very angry at this. Of course, PragerU started talking about this, and they just had so much information, or misinformation. Here's what they said. From 2013 to 2017, hashtag Obamacare premiums more than doubled. Yeah, and if you actually, because here's the thing, premiums rise all the time. They have, ever since there really were premiums to rise. And that's a long and complicated story that basically comes down to insurance companies trying to get special benefits from hospitals. However, if you actually look at the rate they rose, it was less under the Obama administration than it had been under the previous administrations that did not include the healthcare reform that Barack Obama passed. So overall, it cost more, but it would have still cost you more no matter what. We made it cost less than the more it could have cost. That made no sense to anyone but me. In 2018, average premiums for basic plans increased by a third. Wasn't that after Donald started repealing Obamacare? But okay. Deductibles averaged $8,292 for standard family coverage. So maybe, we should have universal health care where that's nothing. The lowest bronze plan averaged $11,555. Conveniently a simple number like that. I don't believe them, is what I'm saying. They also have a video explaining how we can save healthcare, not actually explain the problem with Obamacare. Here's what they put. 1. Allow people to buy only the plans they want, as opposed to before, where you were being forced to buy 5 plans at once, I guess. Yeah, I know what they're trying to say, but wouldn't it make more sense to say only the options they want instead of only the plans? Allow insurance to charge different rates based on riskiness. Well, then you systematically factor out people who have pre-existing conditions or who are more risky and make their deductibles so high they can't afford health insurance, including a real example, might I add, where a baby was denied health insurance for being too fat. That actually happened. There's another example of a woman who had acne when she was younger and then later got cancer. And the healthcare company said, oh no, you didn't actually have acne, you had cancer that last time. So therefore you had a pre-existing condition and we can cancel your plan. Do you see the problem here? Honest to God, do you see the issue? Anyway, so if you remember earlier this year, in fact, I think it was only a few months ago, Candace Owens was, who, if you don't know, is a right-wing commentator, founder of the Blexit movement, which is the I hate identity politics, but I'm going to make a movement specifically for black people. But we're Republicans, so it's okay. And the I'm just a free thinker who hangs out with all my other free thinking friends who all happen to think exactly the same movement recently showed her true colors, as if she had been showing that for years, mind you. On the topic of prison reform, she'd been talking about how great it is and how great Donald Trump is to doing that. I'm just going to read this. My entire life, the leftist politicians made me believe that private prisons were evil and needed to be abolished. Spending time speaking to inmates this year changed everything. Now, I'm going to read you some other Candace Owens tweets real quick, and I'll see if you notice. And keep in mind, by the way, private prisons lobby to lock up more people because that's how they make more money and hand out twice as many indulgence as state-run prisons do. I'm just going to read you some tweets by her. Fact, Texas has shut down 8 prisons in just 6 years by implementing policies presented in the hashtag First Step Act. Citation needed. And South Carolina has shut down 7. Okay, so clearly the idea is you want less people in prison. You know, makes sense. I can agree with that. Here's another one. As a reminder, there is no president that locked up more black men than Bill Clinton with his faithful wife Hillary Clinton by her side. The super predators Clinton thinks blacks are stupid. Okay, first off, that quote was only talking about criminals, and for the record, I find it very suspicious you're willing to just defend criminals like that. I mean, out of all the people that we should be talking about maybe being kinder in our wording towards, I personally don't think criminals is one of those groups, but okay. But again, less people in prison equals good. Okay, makes sense. Then why do you want the people who regularly lobby to create more laws to lock more people up? We've been over this. We've addressed these points. And this is the end result of just wanting to be contrarian. Because that's the kind of person Candace Owens is. She's not a person who rationally thinks through her ideas and actually comes up with a solution to the world's problems. She just wants to say whatever is contrarian. She's just like Ann Coulter or Dan Savage or Tommy Lawrence or any of those people. Here is the basic question I ask everyone who's a fan of Candace Owens and watching this video to answer. Give me Candace Owens' in-depth political ideology, because I've been reading her stuff for a few months now. I can't find it other than all Democrats are racist, but reminder, she's against identity politics. I mean, for God's sake. The Blexit website includes a section saying that Harry Truman was a racist for saying Africa is for Africans, which is also her best friend Donald's immigration policy for America. and her best friend Le Pen's immigration policy for France, and her best friend Farrar's immigration policy for Britain. And you can send her best friends, the Yellow Vest movement, immigration policy for France. I already did France as an example. Do you people see the problem here? Although I personally cannot wait for the Brexit section on their Truce website, where they talk about how actually locking black people up for nonviolent drug offenses was a good thing in the end, because the free market did it. Although Bill Clinton also told them to, so it may have been a bad thing when he did it. Although the first mandatory minimum was signed under Reagan. So, listen, the point is Candace Owens is an idiot. That's really all that needs to be said. I'm Ephrom, and good night.